Well, welcome back to the PetaPixel podcast. Boy,
Back
what a
in
week,
our home
right, guys?
studios.
It has been a nightmare.
So I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit in the iPhone review, which if you haven't watched yet, you should. Where we were just like struggling to find Wi-Fi, just like driving around town, eventually settling on a library. But like that, I think that little segment there sort of encompasses our lives for the last week or so, just like scrambling.
You all have no idea how lucky you are to have those videos. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah. No, I think it also shows poignantly how we should have a deep reverence for state-funded public libraries and the good that they do
true.
For
that was the real
citizens,
takeaway.
For people traveling there, for people trying to upload videos and look at porn. It was it was great.
I don't know about that last one.
Is that what people do at public libraries? I don't know.
I really hope not. That library had just good enough internet, just the good enough internet to get it to upload the video.
Just enough.
Yeah. Well, this week we have quite a bit to talk about, obviously, because it's been a very busy week. Not only did we have our iPhone review launch, but we also have a new Nikon camera. And that new Nikon camera is going for an old aesthetic. And we kind of wanted to talk about what are the benefits of that other than, tickling the member berries. Do you like how I said that?
That was great. Yeah. Okay. I like how you got a little bit quieter.
You have a berry fixation, I think.
We're also going to talk a little bit more about the iPhone review specifically, and I don't think I wanted to do this because I don't think it got enough love in the review. That log profile is really nice. Another story we're going to talk about is a print that was purchased at an estate sale for $2,200 is now being valued at least $250,000. That was quite the find. And then Adobe once again shattered its revenue targets and in response is going to raise its prices. Fun.
The shareholders are delighted.
Delighted. Capitalism. All right, let's get to it. All right, guys. So you remember the photo industry buzz of November of 2020? That's when the highly anticipated Zuiko Digital ED 150-400 f4.5 TC 1.25x IS Pro. That's a long lens name.
That's
it's got a lot of things in it, Jared.
It made its grand entrance, but if you blinked, it was gone.
Yes.
Sold out within 24 hours. The aftermath? It's been 3 years on the back order list.
I haven't gotten to touch one yet.
We wanted to review one way back in the day. We still haven't gotten a chance to, and it sounds wonderful for like birding, sports, that kind of stuff.
Well, I've got good news for you then, Jordan.
What?
Not only are you going to receive one as soon as next week, demand fueled by unprecedented interest by birding and wildlife photographer raced ahead of the production capacity 3 years ago. And now when that lens transformed into one of the most sought after pieces of photographic equipment in the country, those who missed the initial launch sprinted to join that extensive wait list, realizing that time and missed photographic opportunities were the price of not acting quickly. However, navigating through that intricate and precise assembly process, order fulfillment at times extended beyond a year. The excitement, though, is back. The Zuiko Digital ED 150-400 f4.5 lens is now available at explore.omsystem.com/petapixel or at your local authorized retailer for $7,500 without delay. It is back in stock. You can now get it. We're getting you one. You're going to shoot with it.
Nice.
And you're actually going to be able to tell people if it's worth buying, which I'm actually pretty certain it will be. The fully weather-sealed Zuiko ED 150-400mm f4.5 TC 1.25x IS Pro lens.
I'm not looking forward to saying that in the review.
Yeah, how do you do this, Chris? Like your long stretches.
Don't use the abbreviations. Just be like this big thing here.
I'm just going to take the first letter or number from all of those different parts, and I'm just going to make an acronym. It'll be like a Mizigadagafitkabus. It's going to be great.
Well, part of that, the TC 1.25x part, that refers to the built-in 1.25x teleconverter, which boosts it to a 300 to 800 millimeter equivalent focal range, which is a massive 375 to 1000 millimeter equivalent reach.
Yeah, it's a 300 to 800 on your camera, and then with the converter engaged, it goes up to 1000 millimeter full frame equivalent. So that's very nice.
Okay. Chris, do you remember the old Sigma 3 to 800 mil?
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
That was something we just like put up, at the camera store, just on a tripod, like, look, it exists. And people would walk by.
Wait, is that the green
agree
one?
that it exists?
No,
that was the
black,
Bigma. It was black.
But it was
the Bigma.
It was a beast. Yeah, good thing it came out so long ago when I was still young and my back didn't hurt to pick it up. Because I don't even know if we shot it. I think we just toyed around with it. It was crazy.
Just looked at it.
This is going to be far more
Dave
compact.
Paul had to drag it around on our first successful video where we compared it to a super zoom back in the day.
Yes, we had a shootout.
So much nostalgia already. See, I'm on the theme of the episode.
Nostalgia.
Just like, remember back when I shot on a
right.
5D Mark II.
We did tiny point and shoot with a huge zoom versus professional camera with the 300, 800. And I think I had to carry the 300, 800 around.
That sounds accurate, actually.
Yeah,
okay, I stand corrected. That's the
pain.
Problem with your memory. It can be faulty, and we'll touch on that a little later as well.
Okay, well, guys, did you know that in addition to that 1.25x teleconverter, you can put a 2x teleconverter on it?
What?
Or the 1.25 additional MC14, yeah.
Yeah, so it features, you're going to need this if you're doing that. Built-in image stabilization rated to 4.5 stops when coupled with the OM System's 5-axis stabilized bodies. So for up to 8 stops of stabilization for handheld shooting. And if you're shooting at that kind of length, you're going to need it. So anyway, if you want it,
Excited to
it's
play
now
with it.
available.
Nice.
We're gonna review it.
Let's just hope the forest fire has dissipated by that point, or it's going to be like it takes good pictures of haze. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, hopefully no
if you're
smoke.
interested, make sure you visit explore.omsystem.com/PetaPixel. Link below the like button below on YouTube and in the description of the podcast if you're listening to this audio only.
Nice.
All right. Well, thanks for OM System for sponsoring this episode. And before we move on, I do want to point out for anyone watching on YouTube that yes, indeed, I have moved. This is my new studio, and it is extremely incomplete. I focused my efforts on making sure that I was illuminated as opposed to making my background look good. Next week, this should be done.
That's crazy because right before we started, you were like, look, guys, it's done. No room for improvement. Let's podcast.
Yeah,
I believe were your exact words.
Yeah, all right.
You're going for a minimalist aesthetic. I like it. It's a bold move, bold choice.
Yeah, just
it's
a blank
the
white
podcast
wall.
equivalent of on-camera flash photos.
Yeah, just cardboard boxes and blank wall. Yeah.
Well, hopefully y'all enjoyed our podcast from Apple Park last week. That was a lot of fun. On that note, actually, Jordan, before we get to the news, there was one thing you mentioned to us when we walked on set. You made sure to look at the camera that was going to be shooting at you on Apple's podcasting studio. What did you see?
So I did. This is the weird thing is I didn't actually clock which camera it was. It looked like it's a Sony FX9, I'm guessing, FX6. What I noticed was the Fujinon Cabrio zoom, which is an absolutely stunning optic. Remember, Chris, back when we did Collateral wooden nickels, probably the best looking thing we have ever shot because we had a professional cinematographer do it. Fuji was nice enough to send us that Cabrio because we had a zoom in the shot, and we're like, we need a cinema zoom, and that lens is just stunning. I mean, I'd have to check current price, but I'm going to spitball it's around like $50K would be my guess. And it made me look really good in that 1080p 30 frame per second export that we gave you guys.
I thought we looked crisp.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice.
The power of lighting. And
and
incredibly
professional
expensive
staff,
lenses.
and
that's the other. Like, people might not know, we had camera ops on every camera and a director when we walked in there, just to do our silly show, and it was kind of fun because my entire goal throughout the whole thing was like, can I make a camera op laugh? That's it.
The lights were so bright, I actually couldn't see any faces. I'm glad you guys could. I was just seeing blackness.
We should start up a Patreon, and if you guys can get us up to $8 million, we'll make a very similar studio space with Cabrio.
And hire professional ops.
It cost at least that much.
I mean, we had locked off shots and fixed focus. Like, it felt so bad for them all. Like, well, I'm going to monitor the audio, I guess. That's all we can really do.
I will say the only thing that I had to do was just plop that in, because all those camera switches were all done by them too. They were like, they had no idea what our shows. Yeah, they had no idea what our show was like, but they were still able to follow us and actually make those shots look good. So,
but you don't get that anymore. You're back to doing it.
Yeah, now I have
the
to
hard
do
way. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. Let's talk a little bit of news. I want to start with the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, which can now shoot log. And Jordan, can you talk a little bit more about log? Because I don't think you praised it enough. It looks real good.
Yeah, we talked about the feature while we were out shooting. It was pretty seamless, but it was when I was flying back from San Jose, I was sitting next to Chris, and I'm like, these are unbelievable, how well this grades, how well it pushes and pulls, because it goes into your timeline as a standard dynamic range file. You stretch it out. And I mean, even people watching the video, well, we're going to talk about the people watching the video here in a minute, but universally, everybody seems to be like, the manually graded log footage looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And we actually labeled in it, what was graded with Apple's official LUT and what I just did by hand with color wheels and curves. And I loved working with it. I mean, 10 seconds per clip, I could get it into a really nice sweet spot. And that's something I'm always looking for with a log profile. That's why I like Panasonic's V-Log so much, Sony's S-Log 3. It's just, if I don't have a LUT, I can make it work well. Where there's some profiles out there where I'm always like, if I don't have the official manufacturer's LUT, I'm going to be mucking around with color channels for a long time, and it's a waste of my time. So beautiful.
Did you find it a little sharp?
So not the log. No, so the log I didn't find over sharpened.
Yeah,
it looks very natural.
People have been commenting. One of the ones I've seen the most of is that the video footage looks inconsistent. Which, of course it does. We shot in multiple.
We shot a bunch of different profiles. Yeah.
Yes. So, like, if you really want to know what looks the best, I would say it's probably the log shots, right? Then those happen to be closer to the end of the video, like at least the second half and beyond.
Yeah, and we staggered them a little bit. Yeah,
that's the thing that people need to appreciate, right? I mean, people do say with standard iPhone video that we've had before, oh, it's over sharpened, over processed, for sure, right? So the fact that they've now added log as an option really does open up this camera in a big way for videographers. So yeah, I mean, I think it's more significant than just having the color grading. It's like they've stepped up the actual quality that you can get out of the camera. And the only issue, of course, and this will be fixed with third-party apps, is when I was shooting you in log, obviously the auto exposure, there's no waveform, there's no tools. I don't know what percentage your skin tones are at. So, it's like, is that background blowing out? I probably would have pulled it back if I had that information. Obviously, not being able to lock exposure beyond just an automatic exposure lock is tricky too, right? But you were really happy about it. And the grade you said was easy, which was good, because otherwise everything about editing that video was a real trial for you. It was a gauntlet. It was
that's the problem working with pre-production equipment, is we did struggle with that a little bit. One thing I do want to say is when we were shooting out in San Jose, I had no idea how the log was going to respond. So I was willing to clip my highlights because I'm like, I don't know how bad these shadows are going to be. I mean, it's an itty bitty sensor. And on the way back, I'm like, oh man, these shadows are love. I actually elbowed Chris on the plane. I'm like, look at these blacks. There's no noise in these blacks. It's like an APS-C camera. This is unbelievable.
And then when we got back. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, when we were shooting in Calgary and I pulled the log profile off, that's where I was much more comfortable. Like, okay, I'm going to protect those highlights because I know those shadows are going to look good. And I think that's the best looking footage in the video, is once I had learned how to properly expose it.
There were clips when I was watching the video, we were prepping it for launch. I was like, these look like you shot them on a Panasonic camera. Like, they look like the depth of field's the same, the quality is the same, the highlights and shadows. I was really impressed by how good that looked.
Except for the janky shutter speed, which we didn't use third-party apps in order to correct that, because frankly, they wouldn't support the files anyways. But you'll be able to get around that in the future.
100% certain we're going to get a ton of power out of Filmic Pro once they update to this, because that I think we're almost basically finally there. Like, you can do some really cool stuff with an iPhone now if you've got the right setup for it, and I don't mean that with an iPhone with a bunch of stuff attached to it on a tripod, like you've mentioned, and like I think you said this in the last podcast, where you just like a bunch of crap stuck to it.
Dangling. I don't think that's the way a professional works.
You don't need that anymore. So that's
the questions.
Cool.
I mean, it will never be like, I still don't think it's going to be an ideal A cam, but certainly as a supplement to your A cam, just being able to provide footage that will blend nicely, I think it's going to do a great job. I'm curious how many creators are actually still going to bother to go through that workflow. You know what I mean? So we'll see. And that's kind of a question with a lot of the improvements that we had is, like, are people going to even bother to use 48 megapixel HEIF files? I don't know. I don't think so. I think they'll use the 24 megapixel shots because they're nice. So it's always this interesting balance of, with these phones, it's like, yeah, we're opening up these things that you guys can do, but how many people are actually going to do it? And then the balance of the manufacturer having to say, where do we push our priority, right? Is it to people that can really take advantage of the technology, or is it people that just want simple, easy, and convenient? And I think, obviously, and rightly so, they go to simple, easy, and convenient most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I'm going to be using it in the future for like establishing shots. B-roll, like there's times where Chris is just grabbing a shot. I don't have my camera ready and exposed properly, where I will pull out a phone. And that can sometimes I get away with it. Sometimes it's pretty noticeable I've done that. Just always going to shoot it in log, and I know it's actually going to match in nicely. We're never going to use it as an A cam because it's very difficult to know if that USB-C cable is actually on there because there's no on-screen levels. And Chris and I re-recorded our A-roll about the camera's image quality 3 times. We went back to the river because the plug would get a little loose. The sound would cut out. We had some that we kept in there with the internal microphone because it came completely out somehow and switched to the internals. Other ones where it just wasn't recording any audio at all because the plug wasn't totally secure there.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like it needs better monitoring, which again, I know Filmic already offers, so I'm looking forward to using that. But at the same token, I'm going to use a real camera for that. But for like establishing shots, the occasional cool shot of Chris shooting, I'm absolutely going to be comfortable doing it. And I think I'm going to order, a 3-stop ND filter here. So it makes it even better.
There you go.
Here's what I think to close this out, I guess, because we don't spend too much more time on this, but
it was already a 23-minute video.
The kinds of people that I think will really appreciate this would have been me in my early 20s when I wanted to make good looking video. I wanted to learn how to grade log, but I couldn't afford to get invested in a system beyond, like, if I wanted to get a GH system, it was really expensive for me at the time, even though it's not, it's a pretty cheap camera comparatively, $2,000 plus a lens. That's a lot. But if I'm already going to get a phone, I can learn how to shoot, how to grade, how to edit, know what to look for with an iPhone. And even if it's not an ideal A cam for something like what we do, there are a lot of people where it will be an ideal A cam for them. And I think I would have really appreciated having this in my younger years.
Well, we remember that generation where everyone who was into film owned a Rebel T2i for a little while, people just a little bit younger than us. And I think this could be the same thing. It's that same $1,000 gateway drug into making movies. So, I totally agree with you there, Jaron.
Cool. All right, let's move on and talk about a wonderful find at an estate sale that is literally paying dividends. So let me introduce you to this topic. In late 2021, photographer Jeff Sedlick acquired an old, faded, framed print that he recognized at an estate sale. He knew what he was looking at, and he bid on it and won. He paid $2,200 for it. But after popping it out of the frame, he realized it was not 1, but 2 signed, original Alfred Stieglitz prints. Those are now being offered today at auction and are valued at upwards of $250,000. Turns out these are exceptionally rare. These 2 particular prints were thought lost. They were part of an exhibition that Stieglitz put on in the late 1800s, and they disappeared after that. Now they're back. So anyone who doesn't study their photo history, this is why you should study photo history.
Well, one reason.
Yeah, remember also... Yeah, just to make money, right? That's why all history doctorates are in schools. They're just wanting to make serious money. That's why they get into history.
Yeah,
I
they're
feel
like, I
bad-
finally got my PhD, so I can start hitting up estate sales.
Yeah,
That's
just make
the
it
end
time.
game.
I'm gonna be on the Amazing Roadshow here, hopefully the Antique Roadshow. I can't wait. I'm gonna become a millionaire. I feel bad for the person who was in charge of evaluating all the products for the estate sale because someone's very mad at them now. Like two prints in the same photo frame. It's a
And
Can
beautiful.
we
dramatically
talk about the
undervalued.
photo? Like, it's a gorgeous
It's
photo.
a gorgeous photo.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think I'd seen that before, but yeah, stunning.
I think it's his wife. Stieglitz's wife is the one who's in this picture, and according to Christie's, who did some background research on it, this particular crop of this picture was Stieglitz's favorite. He has other prints of this particular photo, but this arrangement was the one that he was most proud of.
The director's cut, if you will.
Yes, the director's cut of a single photo. I like it.
Yeah.
Really neat. I just think that some collector is going to love this. That some collector is not me, but someone would love this.
Yeah.
Hey, it gave me an excuse to look at a pretty picture on the internet this morning. So there
you
it
go.
was worth the $225K.
Yeah, and Alfred Stieglitz's photography is beautiful. I mean, he's done some amazing stuff.
I need to look into that more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gorgeous work.
All right. And then the last thing before we move on to talking about some retro-inspired stuff is Adobe is going to raise some Creative Cloud plan prices, even though it, for like, I don't even know how many quarters in a row, yet again, shattered its revenue targets. So here's what's changing. Luckily, the photography plan is not changing. They haven't raised the price on that one, and I think maybe ever.
Well, they initially priced it to be future-proof until 2040 because that's an expensive plan. Go ahead.
You'll be surprised, Jordan. You'll be surprised.
Anyone who wants to buy a single app, the single app plans, those are going to increase by $2 per month in the annual build monthly option. So the way that, for anyone who's like, that doesn't sound like that makes any sense. They give you a monthly price, but you only get that monthly price if you buy a year.
Yeah.
So that's increasing by $2. It goes from $21 to $23 per month. And then if you go to month, it actually goes up $3. And then if you want to do a 12 months of upfront one-time payment, that also is going up by about $24. So like they're obviously something going on here where they're like, in order for us to continue to break our profit targets, we need to increase those prices a little bit more. And the thing is, they're going to get it because nobody can stop using Adobe products.
Yeah, for sure.
Basically,
this is the world we live in nowadays. I want an app. Maybe it already exists. I don't know, but I want an app where
it's a Chris idea.
Yeah,
I already know where this is going. Actually,
the app goes through all of your subscription stuff, and then it says like, "Hey, dummy, do you know that you're spending like $168 a month on all of these subscriptions?" And then it tabulates them all, and you can see what you are using and aren't using, and then the app will actually like unsubscribe you. I think we need that because I'm sure people out there spending. I can't even keep track. I'm like, we got the Amazon Prime thing going on, we got Netflix going on, and we got all the Photoshop we have going on. Like, I don't know. There's probably some health.
There actually is a company, but because they're not sponsoring this episode, I'm not going to say their name. But they exist.
There's an app that does that?
There is one. It's a financial planning app. It will actually unsubscribe for you if you don't use it. Yes.
I live in
Since we're not
perpetual
saying
fear.
the name of this app, there's also an app that will tell you the name of the app that will unsubscribe you. So you can Google that one as well. I should say we were just filming like 2 blocks away from the Adobe building, and I could smell the caviar. Like those guys are rolling in it right now.
Yeah. Revenue of $4.89 billion. That's an impressive growth of 13% over the same period. That was just in one quarter.
Man.
And just absolutely outrageous.
That's okay because Abode's going to take over and free us all.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for the Abode, and it's not Abode. He said while we were driving around in San Jose, he said Abode, and Jordan
and you
I
almost
both
got in
yelled
a
at
car
him.
accident.
You're
so mad.
Stop it. Well,
Anyways,
maybe Abode can challenge them for some of that billions, but I am not holding my breath.
Who's using Adobe software on the reg right now? Because I am living an Adobe free life. Chris, what Adobe stuff are you using right now?
Oh, Lightroom and
weekly?
Photoshop. Yeah.
Okay.
Lightroom and Photoshop all the time, and nothing else, right? I one of the guys at the shop likes to use Illustrator quite a bit for logos and stuff too. So
good.
yeah, we're getting our use out of it, but it's
Jaron, what are you using?
all the time?
Bridge, Photoshop, Premiere, and Acrobat. This podcast is edited in Premiere, and Acrobat I use every single day.
Yes.
Constantly. And they actually recently updated that app where they moved everything that used to be on the right to the left, which is infuriating. But I'll get used to it, I guess. But yeah, I've been using Adobe stuff for years. But
he's
really
not
into
actually
the ecosystem.
Complaining. Adobe Master Overlords, he's not actually complaining.
Oh,
He
I'm
appreciates
complaining.
it. No, he appreciates the software very much, and thank you for providing it to us, and we'll pay whatever you want.
So years ago, I asked a very difficult question to Adobe's still CEO, Shantanu Narayan, and it was during like a panel, and he provided one of the deftest dodges I've ever heard from any CEO. It's where he basically talked around the question and then didn't answer it and moved on.
Like presidential press officer level kind of stuff. Oh, nice.
Just like thanking me for such a good question, and then he talked long enough that everyone had forgotten what I asked. And then he moved on.
That's classic.
Yeah. Great. Fabulous. Thanks, Shantanu. All right, we're going to move on before I talk myself into a hole.
Yeah, you're going to get us killed.
John's listening.
Guys, why don't you tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the new ZF from Nikon that has been swirling on the rumor sites for what feels like forever.
Yes.
And then whether or not you think this design aesthetic actually does anything other than, as I said earlier, tickle those member berries.
Go, Chris. This is your baby.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I asked for this. I asked for the ZFC, and then they made it. And then I complained that we need a full frame, and they made it, right? So, yeah, no, I literally asked for this this camera. So the retro design, I mean, I think, sure, it's fine. It's a nice alternative. I mean, Fujifilm has been doing really well with it, for sure. And it makes sense that people enjoy that. I think there is some benefit to the retro design in terms of we kind of have to forget about retro. I mean, that's really not the point. I mean, it's really just a different way of changing your controls. And I think a lot of people respond to that dedicated dial for changing controls rather than a customizable command wheel. Although the ZF has customizable command wheels as well, so you can kind of do it. But it is about style, really. I don't think the ergonomics are that big a difference. To me, it's really about style. It's about coveting your camera, enjoying the experience, some nostalgia. I know Jordan does. He's very anti-nostalgia. We're going to get into that.
Oh, we're going to touch on this.
Nostalgia.
Clearly, yes. He referred to nostalgia as a deadly disease. So, I love it.
I'm getting that shirt made.
I think it's great. I think it's great, and it appealed to me. It tickled my berries, so they're tickled, and I'm happy. So, yeah, I like it, and I really enjoyed that the ZF, although it is larger than the ZFC, and honestly, I do feel the ZFC is still the sexier of the two cameras. I like that they didn't go with some sort of hybrid thing like the DF. I was really scared that we're going to have a DF2, and I'm happy that we actually have just a bigger ZFC.
I mean, my take on this is, I'm not a super nostalgic person. Also, I didn't grow up shooting film like Chris did. I came into it during the DSLR days is when I started taking pictures. I mean, if I see like a 16 millimeter Bolex camera, I get so excited and antsy. So I do, suffer from a similar kind of affliction, just not in photography land. But I do want to say, like, there are real practical benefits to those mechanical dials. Like, I loved the Fujifilm X-T3. And the thing a lot of people forget is mirrorless cameras are a lot hungrier on battery life than DSLRs. So I love with a camera like this or a lot of the Fujifilm bodies, before you turn that camera on, you can see my shutter speed's here, my aperture is here on the lens, my ISO is here, or you can set up the shot before you even turn the camera on. I think that makes a lot of sense as opposed to like fully controlled dial-based cameras where you've got to fire it up, see where you were last time, and then start twiddling your dials to get to where it should be. I do think there is some benefit to that. I do think the ergonomics on old film cameras sucked. And I mean, we were looking at the ZF there and we're like, boy, I'd sure love to see the grip for this. I'd love to see the grip. But you put the grip on and you lose. It doesn't look like a FM film body anymore. It looks like a modern digital camera with cool control dials on the top of it. So is that preferable, Chris, or do you want it to look like you're walking around with a classic Nikon film body?
And Chris doesn't tend to like grips either, so
No, the ZFC had a flat front, and I actually really liked that. I thought it was perfectly comfortable. The downside is going to be if you want to use heavier glass or longer lenses. I mean, we talk about how the ZF is actually a very capable camera for street shooting, even for wildlife, except I wouldn't want to really have necessarily like big, heavy telephotos on that body because I just don't think it works very well. Or I'd certainly want the grip in that case, the optional grip, because the grip on the ZF is quite small.
Yeah, because it has to look like that if they want to tickle your member berries. Totally. It has to be completely painful to hold. It has to be this rectangle with bumps on it. It's got to have those little bumps. I don't know what you want to call those. The tactile bumps that were on like film cameras back then.
Oh, like the leatherette?
Yeah, is it leather or is it plastic? It depends on who you ask. Okay. Well,
leather-esque leatherette.
It's leather.
That's the tongue twister of the week.
You can make it look like that with plastic from a distance, and then you're holding it and it feels like crap because the bumps are too big. And then it's just this block. It's like you're carrying around a brick. I'm walking around with this brick. It's the same issue you brought up with all smartphones. They are not fun to hold because they're not designed to be used like a camera. But at the same time, now you're saying, well, it's fine if it's a retro-looking camera. I'll hold this little brick like that.
It's style over substance, but style can be an important... Like, there's a whole subsect of people that are like, I don't care what the camera looks like. I just want it to be a functional tool. And that's fine. I get that. But at the same time, there is also an appreciation for something beautiful and something... classy and stylish. And that goes across every industry, right? It's not just cameras. And I think that has to be appreciated too. And I mean, Leicas, of course, have capitalized on that. And
but you can get those cool little metal grippy things to stick on there where your hands have somewhere to go. Now, it's not included with the camera, but do they have those for the Nikon?
Someone should
we actually held it while we were in San Jose. Yeah. It's very, very comfortable. I just want to jump on what Chris was saying there. There's this conception that like photographers only care about function, but our job is to make aesthetically pleasing things. And like Leica and Fujifilm are the only two companies who are like, what if we make it like look good? And people are like, oh my god, photographers are responding to this. Of course they are. They're in the visual arts.
Yeah. Now, could they, should Small Rig or whoever else make a grip that looks like the old MD-12? Absolutely, they should. And then that would be the creme de la creme. I'm surprised they didn't. They had an opportunity to do that. But the fact is, these retro designs, from a grip standpoint, aren't as usable to hold for a wide variety of lenses. But I think it's a good compromise. What really fascinates me about the ZF, though, is that although it is this retro camera design, it actually is Nikon's test bed for like a whole slew of brand new technologies that we haven't seen, certainly from some manufacturers at all, and at least some of them at first for Nikon. So, just to rattle them off, I mean, the new VR that rotates around the subject you focus on rather than the center. The fact that they were able to improve their VR to the point where it's now like 8 stops is pretty crazy in a full frame camera. The fact they got multi-shot now,
3D tracking,
the autofocus algorithms. So it's interesting that they really came out. Even video, Jordan, right? I mean, they've got some improvements there.
Yeah, I said in the video, like it's not a bunch of stuff we've never seen before, but the Z8 and Z9 are such incredibly capable hybrid cameras. To get a lot of those functionality at this price is actually really cool. I mean, what I find compelling about this is you could call it the Z6 III, except it's in a hybrid, like weird, analog style body that a lot of people, that a lot of people aren't going to care for. Like, I find it interesting that Fujifilm, like, look at the X-T5, XH2, they were released months apart, and they're two different body designs that are very similar, and especially in terms of photographic capabilities. I'm shocked Nikon didn't say, like, look, here's the ZF, but also if you prefer our Z6 II handling, that's coming as well. If you want your dual card slots, your focus joystick, things like that, if that's important. But right now it's like, I really want those new features, but what if I'm not crazy about the analog style and handling? Yeah. That puts you in a tricky place right now until we see what Nikon's eventual plan is.
It's ironic that like the ZFC was basically just a reskinned Z50, and the Z6 III might just be a reskinned ZF. It's just gonna be the opposite.
Yeah, it's backwards.
Yeah, it's just backwards. I'm like, okay.
But you'd be okay with that.
Yeah, well, no, I would still use the ZF, but good on them. I mean, I really respond to that look. Look at my nostalgia. Look, I'm rocking the
Yeah, I was about to ask if there was a reason you wore
nostalgia.
that.
Got Beatrix Potter cup here. We'll talk about the microscope, but I love nostalgia. I'm a big fan of it. Why not? Why not?
I do want to point out, just because you liked something when you were younger doesn't mean it's objectively good now. That's an opinion that everyone in North America needs to get rid of right now. It's ruining culture. Stop it.
Most of the time it is. Some stuff holds up.
No!
So when I say the member berries, that's
this
for anyone
doesn't have anything branded on it. Never mind.
It's a reference to South Park, and that whole episode's takeaway is what Jordan just said: that nostalgia bad, nostalgia not good. All it does is just all you're doing is eating the member berries, and it's not helpful.
I think you're jaded because a lot of our childhood is being reused now. You know, it's being remade, but remade with like changes that have nothing. Like, it doesn't even resemble what we had in the past, and like terribly done jobs. I mean, that might jade you. I mean, I don't know.
Yesterday or 2 days ago, I saw a commercial that used "What Does the Fox Say" as the song.
Oh no.
And I'm like, okay, that we've officially gotten to the point where I'm the target old audience, and they're trying to hit me up with something that I remember from my my younger days. All of this note, I always like to play devil's advocate. I don't actually often share my real opinions.
This time.
Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I really want the green version of the ZF. I actually want that.
Beautiful.
So I do want it, and I would use it. And even though I think that the ergonomics aren't ideal for what I would use that camera for, which is just to actually take pictures that I want. I don't need it to feel fantastic all the time. I'm not running around. I'm not shooting sports. I'm not trying to make a film where I need it to have a certain build to it. I would just use it for personal enjoyment.
Yeah.
So
I do want to say,
that's where I draw the line is
we talk about how this.
Go ahead.
No. You finish. Finish.
If I want to make something for art, for the sake of art, I'm capturing something, or I need to do something for work. Actually, no, that's what it is. If I want to do something for work, I'm going to use a camera that has the built-in ergonomics and ability to perform there. But if I want to make something for me, then I'm probably going to use. That's why I like Leica cameras. That's why I like rangefinders. They're terrible for doing actual work. They're way too slow, but they're fun. And they make me feel like a better artist. So that's why I probably like it.
With the Nikon ZF, we're talking though about how the design. We're kind of implying that it's a downside. That it's like a compromise. We're suffering bad ergonomics in order to have the style. And I mean, that's not necessarily true.
It's not wholly true.
No, it's not, because photography's not. It's always been about the right tool for the right job. And where the Nikon ZF, I think, would absolutely excel is for travel and street photography, because you have crazy fast shooting burst rates. You have excellent VR that's actually optimized for more wide angle lens use, which is synonymous with street photography in a lot of cases. You have, the algorithms are going to pick up eyes at a distance. The camera can focus at -10 EV at f1.2 equivalent, like almost near darkness. So this camera would actually be a fantastic lightweight camera to walk around and do street photography with compact primes, especially wides and normals, where you could get great shots, grab shots, very accurate focus in any kind of lighting. And it's also going to look sexy to boot. And those are situations where that smaller grip isn't going to be a disadvantage, Right. So I think it's actually going beyond just style. It is designed for a certain kind of photography where it would actually do very, very well.
Well, I'm surprised. Like, they do have a couple of vintage looking lenses, we should say, the 28 and the 40, both 2.8s. I'm shocked Nikon didn't bring out some of their stunning 1.8 primes and do like a design that would fit well with this body. If anyone opens up like a third-party shop that'll vintagize your modern ZF lenses, I could see that doing really well. Like the 51.8 is a no-brainer. Like, make that thing vintage looking. But I do think it would work well with that. But also, like, a lot of their modern lenses are pretty big. And yes, vintage not. I mean, it looks pretty vintage already. You will drop it immediately if you put it on this camera. Without that awesome little accessory grip that they make.
It'd be nice to have dedicated aperture rings more often, or command rings on some of the other glass that you can. I mean, we see it on bigger lenses, but it'd be nice to see like customizable command rings for aperture.
Look, I'm probably going to get the ZF and then buy a Casino Voigtlander lens. Let's be real.
Like, there you go. I used it with my AI lenses, and it was nice. I mean, just the fact that it would like the eye detect would still work in manual focus mode. So when I go to punch in to confirm focus, it's already on the person's eyes and face.
That is neat. That is neat and super helpful.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting tool, and it's kind of neat that they decided to showcase a lot of new technology on this vintage camera.
Okay. So Chris, you are of the, is there any actual benefit to retro design? Chris says
totally.
Yes. Jordan?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm a depends.
You're wearing Depends?
Like, yeah. That's how I get through these long podcast recordings after all the coffee I have.
See, you're the target audience for all this nostalgia, Jordan. Your age group.
I am also with Jordan. I will put on the Depends as well. All right. All right. Let's talk about what's on.
I'm going to hold my pee like
week.
A big boy.
All right. Okay. Thank you. We'll see how long that works. How many years you got left? All right. Let's talk about the microscope. What do you got? What's on your desk there, Chris?
Oh, so well, in terms of nostalgia, yeah. So I got the Beatrix Potter cup there. It's my daughter's. It's not mine. That would be kind of strange. But that's my time. That's my time era. I got the microscope.
Wasn't it like the 1920s?
Yeah, but as a kid, I mean, like my mom bought all. Anyways, you see, nostalgia's beautiful. You're destroying my childhood memories. And it's a perfectly good cup, even though it's vintage. So the microscope. This is a blast to the past, and I'm loving it. So I don't know why. There's this great YouTube channel. This is why. There's an amazing YouTube channel called Journey to the Microcosmos. They do an amazing job. Like it's so well done. And Hank's voice, I mean, he does a lot of other science stuff, but he's soothing voice. You'd love it. But anyways, I started watching that, and I'm fascinated. I'm like, I need to do it. So I got a microscope. I've been looking at blood smears. I've been looking at pond water, aquarium water, leaves, plant stems. Like, it's been amazing. And like the kids, even though they range in age from like 7 to 18, they've all been really enjoying it. It's fascinating. And my wife's been loving it. I mean, it's one of the best purchases I've ever made.
Can you get easy access to agar plates? Agar, or like for
agar plates?
Agar,
I don't know. Maybe.
I think you probably can. And what you can do, I did this in high school. Culture stuff. And you can do it in an anaerobic environment very easily. The way that they used to do it in hospitals, which they've changed now, is you'll take those plates after you smear something. Like, let's say I did a project in high school where I was like, what's growing on the keyboards in the public library? So I smeared, I wiped them
Especially after Chris has been there after his earlier statement.
So I wiped them down, and then I put them on the plates, and then you put a lid on them. You put them in a jar. And then on the lid of another plate, you stick a candle. So you light the candle, you put it in there, you close the lid, it'll suck all the oxygen out, the candle goes off by itself, and then you put it in a warm place that's temperature controlled or whatever, and you can then culture it later and then take a look at that and look under in a microscope. What I did is I tested as if garlic would kill it. That was my science project.
Yeah.
And garlic kills it. Most of the stuff on keyboards is Staphylococcus, by the way, in case you were curious.
Nice.
Garlic wipes that out. Basically no problem. Raw garlic just murders microbes.
Oh, that's great because I'm always eating Italian while I'm editing, so I'm golden.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, you could do that. I think that's really fun. My mother is a laboratory scientist, and so I had access to the lab, and I used that.
So if anybody out there has suggestions of what I should be looking at, I mean, there's things I don't want to look at, right? I mean, there's like things where I'm like, do I really want to know what's growing in my eyeballs, or like, my armpits are like, probably not.
Armpits, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been so fascinating. I highly recommend it. And I'm getting I got a Micro Four Thirds camera adapter coming.
Cool.
So I can take pictures and stuff. So
very cool.
Yeah, we'll see.
So obviously I moved.
Yes.
That's what I've been doing this week, and it is not done, as I mentioned.
What?
Previously.
Your background looks amazing.
Well, okay, so I've already noticed something I need to deal with. I've got a door over here with like a window cut out at the top, and it has just been shining the brightest hot spot behind me. I'm going to have to get like a curtain to cover that during podcasting. But yeah, that's there's going to be a TV here. I'm going to put some lights over here behind the TV, and then this thing needs to get lit up too still. I haven't done that yet. It's going to be fun.
I think you should just build a gobo for your window there, so you could for Halloween, put like a jack-o'-lantern on your back wall there.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, whatever camera we're talking about every week, just have a little cutout silhouette for it. It'd be amazing.
And when you want it to be a window, you could just do the cheesy, 80s looking window.
Get the black gaffer's tape.
Yeah.
I think somewhere
Palm
in here,
trees.
probably next to that 28 to 70 millimeter Sigma lens that I've got somewhere in the stuff that came here, I've probably got a holder that's designed to hold gobos. It's somewhere in there. I think I could probably find it. And that's not
speaking of nostalgia, someone's going to start using gobos again. Everyone's going to be like, "This is amazing! We've had this for 100 years."
Very likely, what I'll do is I'll just flag it off rather than gobo. But whatever. Jordan, you got anything to share? What you've been doing besides slaving away in your edit bay?
I finally started watching The Bear, FX's show, which actually Chris's eldest was like, "You haven't watched that? That's my favorite show on earth." And it's like, well, okay, if it has the Kai seal of approval, then I'm going to hit that up. And it is, I mean, as everybody said, it's won every award. Like it was the big, prime TV show everyone was talking about that I wasn't watching. And I've watched halfway through the first season, and it's absolutely fantastic. And after probably the most stressful week I've ever had at work, to watch a show that is unbelievably stressful, the entire thing is just a pressure cooker of, financial insecurity and high pressure. It wouldn't seem like the best fit, but it's so well done. I'm jamming hard on it. So
I
if you haven't checked it out yet,
I haven't watched it yet.
The buzz is accurate.
I've watched a couple episodes, but it was stressful. It was stressful to watch.
I don't know that I want that because I used to work in those environments. I used to work in a kitchen and we'd be like, I'm back there again. Fantastic. This is wonderful.
Cortisol levels rising as we even talk about it. So it's tough. It's a tough watch. I'm sure it gets better though, right, Jordan? Like as you get past the second, third episode.
Yeah,
not better, but it. You get more invested.
I've heard it kind of curves up and down with the pressure, but the last couple episodes I've watched have just been like really enjoyable character studies. So it's not like it's not like watching Uncut Gems for 10 hours. Like there is some respite from the stress.
Right. On that same talk, my oldest son Kai, I recommend he watch the Terror first season, and he did, and he's like, I binged it almost a day. Like it's great, it's amazing. So if you really do totally go with Kai's seal of approval, then you have to watch the Terror season 1.
Well, I'm gonna have to get it from him first party. Like now it's a vicarious recommendation from you.
I'm tired of asking.
I'm gonna wait till Kai actually tells me.
I'll get him to text you
Chris
right now.
Actually added another thing to my list of things to watch this week. I put it on my watch list, but it is behind like 5 other anime. So, Chris, I'm sorry, I'm not going to get to it. Can you tell the audience what it was again? I don't even remember the name.
Well, it's Kabineri and the Iron Fortress. I enjoy it. It's quick. It's one season. I thought it was cool. It's got zombies. It's great. You'll love it.
All right. Thank you. All right, let's move on to tech support. We're going to start with a SpeakPipe message from Jason Wendling. And this is one that you guys have been noodling on for a bit, which is why, Jason, we haven't answered it yet. They were thinking. But here we go. Let's listen in to Jason.
Hey, Jason here. Thanks for the podcast. Question for tech support. Curious if you can explain monitor calibration and which color profile to use for photo editing versus video editing.
So, Jason, this is a good question. And I think from what I'm seeing here, we probably have 2 different things that we're talking about. So I'm going to talk about photo and Jordan will talk about video. I mean, monitor calibration in my mind is the concept of using an actual device. Okay, so a colorimeter that you put onto your monitor. The software runs a whole bunch of color swatches, sees how far off of calibration it is, and then readjusts it. And there's many different brands, and they'll all sort of, tote different benefits to their brand. But in the end, they're basically trying to get all of your monitor to a universal look. So it's not about what's right or wrong. It's about getting everybody to agree what cherry red should look like and what banana yellow should look like, kind of thing. So monitor calibration can be very important. A lot of monitors do come pre-calibrated by the manufacturers now, but monitors drift over time, colors shift. So there is benefit to then redoing that. And this is a big benefit if you then want to start printing or sharing photos with other people, where you know that the file looks a certain way in your monitor, and if they've calibrated their system, when you send a picture to them, it should look similar. It'll never be identical, but it should look similar, okay? But then there's also color spaces that we use, like Adobe RGB, sRGB, ProPhoto RGB, and these kind of things. And in that regard, it's a little bit different. I mean, that really dictates how far apart your dynamic range can be, where your colors fall on a tonal scale. how much saturation you can get out of the most saturated colors, or will it clip them off? And the two common ones are going to be Adobe RGB and sRGB. And that really comes down to... And P3, I mean, there's so many now, right? And that really comes down to what the monitor can actually deliver, right? So, for example, I still edit in sRGB because the majority of my photos are going to be going on to the articles, or, with Deep Review, they were in sample galleries and stuff. And that was the lowest common denominator. You could be sure that everybody's monitor would at least support sRGB color spaces. So that's what we chose to edit in. And yeah, it means you are losing maybe some really bright saturated colors if they were present in the first place. But if you go Adobe RGB, most monitors can support that. Now we're pushing beyond with HDR monitors, and they can go well beyond that color space. So that's a tough one. It's really confusing because you got to kind of decide what's your intention and your output.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing, is how your audience is going to be viewing it, because it's essential for print. Nothing is more frustrating than printing out, wasting ink and expensive paper multiple times to get the look that you want. But nowadays, we just have to accept the majority of our photos are going to be looked at on not calibrated displays, which is why I take a very different tactic for video. When I'm editing photos, I'll edit them on Apple displays with default settings. And then with video, we have run into an absolute nightmare this week because so much of what makes the iPhone image good is that it is in an HDR color space, start to finish. You take the picture, it tone maps it for the iPhone's HDR display, then you put it on your Mac, which is HDR. That is the workflow that they're envisioning for it. So we said, okay, this is the first episode top to bottom. I'm going to shoot, edit, and export in HDR. And we put it up this morning, and everybody is watching it on SDR displays or HDR displays with different calibration on it. And YouTube compression's doing stuff with it as well. I mean, it's an incredibly different, weird transitionary period that we're in. Because we talked about this a little while ago on the pod, how I always do my basic grade on, a standard Apple display, and then I throw it on a television. And I figure that and I'll usually look at it on a phone as well. That covers a lot of the bases of what most people are going to look at it on. I don't calibrate the display because people looking at it on a properly calibrated display is like 2% probably. Most displays are going to juice the saturation, the contrast. I mean, we still have people with motion smoothing on their TVs, for God's sake. So clearly people aren't willing to go off the default settings to give you something more true to life. So that's what I've been doing for YouTube. Now, that said, I have done a few projects that are going on DCPs, movies that are going to be shown in movie theaters. Those are all color graded on proper color graded displays. We look at it on, we've got a standard 709. We had a tube TV even that we could export it to look at it, see how it would look on that. And then how it was going to look theatrically. And that is a very different thing when you're talking about video. There you have to be, or, point, right? If we were remember doing ads, Chris, where we had to do the same thing, properly calibrated displays and make sure they'd fit into a broadcast going over the airwaves color space, which had 4 stops of DR or something.
That's the thing. You're not grading one project and then sharing it with the entire world, and you are selectively grading the projects for the output for projector. Then you have to do a different grade for TV, different grade for YouTube if you really want to hammer it home that you're getting the best dynamic range and the colors that you want. And yeah, you're right. I mean, everybody gets a TV. They just go in, they start playing with the settings and changing contrast and vibrancy, and you've totally shot any sort of...
the worst is when people choose to set it to vivid. My father-in-law and my dad both set the TV to vivid, and I'll turn it off, and the second they sit back down, they put it back. It's just what is wrong with you? That doesn't like reality at all.
But it's your TV, right? So, set it how you want it, but it just compounds...
incorrect. No, you're wrong. Okay, you're not supposed to do that.
Jaron. I'm on Jaron's side with this.
Don't ever use vivid.
Everybody, if Jaron and Jordan become the dual kings of the world, we're all going to have to turn off motion smoothing and follow the manufacturer's
decree.
And then after
I'm going to run
vivid.
On that.
Yeah. And the penalty will be death.
Death penalty if you're using vivid.
The penalty will be eyes gouged out, so you never have to worry about colors again.
our iPhone video is doing fantastic. So I could say right now, there are 10,000 people who are watching that HDR video on a SDR display with vivid settings turned on. And there is going to be, everyone is going to look like purple, horrifying monsters the entire way. And then they'll jump on the YouTube comments and be like, Jordan is the worst colorist I have ever seen. Like, please, we put double disclaimers. Watch this video on an HDR display if you want to know what the footage looks like. It's an HDR phone that is outputting HDR. It makes sense to do it on HDR. And everybody is like, this looks terrible. Yes, Dolby Vision, but everybody is watching it and being like, oh, there's flat and there's no tonality. It's because you're watching it on an SDR display, and we repeatedly said, YouTube can't do good HDR to SDR conversions.
It goes to show how much confusion is out there and how much variety is out there. And I mean, this is also, I mean, we're talking about video, but also for stills, for sure, right? I mean, you know, we've always had this problem where I'm using Android, you guys using Apple, and, you know, we'll take pictures and send them to each other's phones, and they look completely different on the different displays.
Yes.
And as much as you want to say, like, Apple is creating their own universe and they're sticking to it and they don't want anybody else to play, I get it, because they are making their photos HDR photos that look proper on their displays. You can't make something that works universally for everybody without sacrificing the potential that your camera can even record.
It's why we have like 5 HDR standards, and no one can agree on one.
It has to standardize.
Yeah.
Just one final thing, like if you want to talk about what a hassle all of these are. So Lubezki, one of the best cinematographers in the world, does a separate color grade for theatrical, for HDR, Blu-ray, HDR streaming, and SDR screening. He regrades every shot in the entire movie 4 ways. That's his process to make sure it's going to look good on all those. Most people aren't going to take the time, so computers are making those decisions for you, and they're doing a bad job of it.
So, Jason, to answer your question, the real answer is build a time machine, go back to the analog days, and then just stand next to the people looking at your photography, and then you can have an open dialogue about the colors and the tones and stuff, because that's it. Otherwise, it's just a cesspool of anger and fighting and badness and confusion. And
well, we stayed on this topic for a lot longer than I anticipated.
Hey,
we
Luke.
have several more to go. Luke Hayward sent us an email this week. Thank you for the podcast. I have a question. My 2 young children have neurodivergence, and when taking their photo, it can be difficult to get them to look towards the camera. One technique I've developed is to use the selfie camera on my iPhone, as the children enjoy seeing their own image on the screen. Can you recommend a mirrorless camera with an articulating screen that can output a live preview to the screen and viewfinder simultaneously? This would allow the children to watch themselves on the screen while I frame the shot through the viewfinder. Do I need to invest in an external monitor instead?
So, I had a bunch of exports crashing yesterday. I actually went through all the different manufacturers of cameras that I have in my house right now to see if this was possible. And none of them would give me the option to have the EVF and LCD live simultaneously.
Yeah, that is tough.
So
I can't think of any way to get both. Even external monitors, Jordan, most cameras will still shut off the display.
A lot won't actually, because we do a lot of the time. Chris has the camera up to his eye, and I can see on the Ninja what we actually use now, which is what I would probably recommend, is a device called the Axoon CMO, and that'll let you run an HDMI feed out of your camera. But instead of buying an external display, and cheap external displays are pretty low quality, you have to actually spend quite a bit of money to get a good one. It'll just let you use, there's a version for Android and a version for iOS. So you can kick that feed in there and then use your phone as a monitor. It'll be very bright, very detailed. You can also use it as a recorder and stuff, which can be kind of fun. But for this particular use, I think that would make a ton of sense because I know Sony, Panasonic, and I'm missing one, Canon will let you simultaneously output EVF and HDMI. So that would be my recommendation. The other thing is, this is like a great use case that manufacturers don't think about, where it might be worth saying like, hey, look, here's a use case where you have the hardware to do it. Let's see that in a custom firmware. I think that's something I'm actually going to mention to them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's no reason that you normally would, but this is a great use case. So
just let me turn them on. Yeah.
Yeah, just ask, hey, can you design me a little custom firmware? But as a stopgap, I would say CMO out of the HDMI makes a lot of sense for that.
And make
All
sure
right.
that you call it a Ninja for the rest of your life, even though it's not a Ninja.
Is that what you
Jordan
do?
loves.
It's
By the
so
way, Jordan's a
firmly
huge
ingrained.
fan. Jordan's a huge fan of ninjutsu. It's like his favorite thing. It's all he talks about.
That's it. I know that's not true. All right. So the next one is another email we got from Matthew Ball. I'm looking for recommendations on which camera or cameras you would suggest for me. In short, my wife and I are avid hikers, and we love taking pictures of our adventures in Alberta. Ooh, they're nearby.
Oh, that's a lovely province.
Yeah, I'm
We are
partial
also
to taking pictures there.
We are also doing a number of trips this year, and I'd love to document those too. I am also looking to record some YouTube videos and possibly some courses to sell online. I'm not looking for anything big or massive, as taking that on hikes and mountains would not be a great idea. However, I am looking for something that is easy to travel with and takes good photos and videos. My price range for the camera and the lens together will be between $1,500 and $2,000 Canadian dollars.
Mm-hmm.
What do you suggest?
The one that immediately jumped out to me, which we specifically called kind of the best value hybrid camera, is I do really love that Fujifilm X-S20. It's just kind of checks all the boxes of a good photo camera, and the video quality on it is excellent. There's a lot you can do with it, especially for social media. You can shoot open gate and get vertical and horizontal video out of it. That would be probably my first pick.
Yeah, it's a beautiful camera. I do like it. I mean, otherwise you're looking at, the classics like Sony A6700, although that's kind of pushing the price a little bit.
That's definitely above that Canadian, yeah.
Yeah, if you throw a lens in there. But some of the older A66, those will work fine too. So that could be a good option. Yeah.
I'm not helpful here because I don't know the
Micro
conversion.
Four Thirds would be another way that I would go. I mean, certainly Micro Four Thirds.
What's the conversion
and I prefer
from
that
dollar
for
reduced
travel.
to US dollar?
I prefer Micro Four Thirds just because it can be rugged. It can be easy to carry small lenses. You can still get pretty good video out of them. So yeah, I mean, that could be an option as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one I was going to suggest is the Nikon Z5, but because video is also important, that's not a great video camera. I think that's the best photo quality value right now, but as a hybrid, I just think it's outclassed by the Fujifilm.
I mean, if your video demands aren't huge, if you just want to kind of record stuff and record classes, I mean, OM5 would be great for the price range. Panasonic?
I mean, if you can still get a G9 original, we've been saying for years, that's such an incredible value right now. But I don't know if they're still kicking around.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. For the never read the comments this week, I hope everyone will forgive me because I did not have as much time to read the comments as I have in previous weeks because we were very busy.
It was a bad week, people. Cut us a break.
But we do have
week.
Three speak pipe questions. So we're going to listen to three questions and we'll answer those. So the first one is from Anonymous.
Ooh.
This is a question for Jordan. So I am a very, very amateur, quote unquote, filmmaker. I've never actually worked on anything professionally before, but I do enjoy making my own little short films. And I have an idea to make a feature-length film, but I didn't go to film school. I've never worked on something like this before. So I'm curious to hear Jordan's thoughts on if I was to have a bare minimum film crew, like 3 to 4 people other than myself, what are the roles or the people that I would want in my crew as a bare minimum group? Thank you.
I mean, this is one that really depends on your skill set. I think a lot of directors, when they're starting out, will have come from another crew position. And if you haven't, I would really recommend, work on someone else's movie, understand the dynamic of it. I know for me personally, my answer would be okay, I'm going to ditch the cinematographer for that because that's a hat that I can wear while I'm dealing with that. And I would rather have an assistant director. I find that an incredible, someone to answer questions, crowd control, organization, all that kind of stuff. So you can focus on the performances, which is a director's main job, I would say. And then making sure that the mood and everything is exactly where you want it, which is one of the roles of a cinematographer. If you're not super savvy in terms of the video process, then absolutely get a professional. I would say an audio person, a cinematographer, those should be the first ones. And if at all possible, hair and makeup, I think, makes an enormous difference in terms of actually making something look professional. How many mumblecore movies have we seen where you can just tell that people rolled in after a night of partying to go work on that independent film for free? So those would be my recommendations. Just kind of take a look at what your skill set is. But the one thing do not ever skimp on is have a separate person for sound, no matter what. Even if you know sound quite well, you're not going to be able to focus on it while you're paying attention to performance. So that's number one.
For me, I'm the opposite. Well, not necessarily opposite, but I would hire a cinematographer because I want someone who's better at creating the mood, better at making a lot of lighting decisions. I focus my skills on camera op and directing. So like that's where I would lean more towards. So yeah, like he said, it really depends on what you think you're good at. But everything else, I echo Jordan's sentiments.
But you'll be depending on, if you only have a crew of 3 or 4, you're going to be depending on yourself to do a lot of these extra jobs, and you're going to be depending on those crew to then also do all the gaffing and the grip. So they have to be okay with that and know what's going on there. I mean, I would say having a person who's like a skilled grip, that's super useful to have. Somebody who can set things up, knows how to manage cables, knows how to get everything set up the way you need it to. I think that's a big time saver, and I don't know if you have room for that.
It's a shocking how much time you'll spend setting things up if they're not familiar with it, or like with the set or anything. It can
that stuff gets damaged or knocked over, or
hours.
The lowest budget film I ever worked on was something called Metanoia that I did with Levi Hallwell, and we started out with me in a traditional cinematographer position where I was lighting and then opping. But because we were so constrained for time, what we eventually moved over to, the guy's got a good visual sense, is I would go ahead and pre-light the sets and he would op once everything was set up properly. And that worked really well. I mean, we were able to almost double the speed that we were working once we switched over to that system. So if you're on a very tight budget, that's something to consider as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. Hopefully that was helpful, Anonymous. This is an interesting one, and it kind of does go with what we've been talking about today. And it's from Shahaf. Let's listen in.
Hi, Chris, Jordan, and Jared. Really like your podcast. I'm struggling with the difference between digital photography and analog photography. And I found the digital photography, I don't know, not valid enough for me. Do you feel the same? Do you understand what I'm talking about?
I do understand what you're talking about. I don't necessarily agree, and I get it. I mean, digital to me, especially being in the industry so long, is photography's been changing since its inception, right? And I've noticed that every group that's come before, whenever new technology comes out, they always tend to say, oh, that's a joke, that's a toy, that'll never take off, it's not real. And then inevitably it does. I mean, they said that about 35 millimeter film, I'm sure the large format guys said that about medium format when it came out. And now we say it about digital. And then people said, oh, like APS-C will never take off, it's a joke. And it obviously does. So I can't really agree with that, but I know what you're saying. And I get the joy of doing things in a harder way or in a more look at this. This is a bamboo fly rod that I made myself.
Oh God, no!
Wow,
yeah,
where
here
did
we
that
go.
even come
George's
from?
gonna love. So I love fishing a bamboo fly rod, but this is classic. It's nostalgic. It's in every term, in every way, as far as technicality goes, inferior to what we have nowadays for fishing. But sometimes it's just about having that experience and being able to relax and slow down your cast and feel the fish. And fish was something that used to be alive. And I get it. There's a beauty there. There's a romance there. At the same time, a modern graphite rod could do everything better, everything more. And in the end, we're still just catching fish. So that's how I would look at it.
This is an incredible metaphor that I was not expecting to come from fishing.
We're still just catching fish, Shahaf. So whatever you like to catch fish on, that's all that matters. You just have to make sure that catching fish is bringing you joy and that you're taking care of those fish the way you should be.
I think a great way to look at this is you as a creator and an appreciator can enjoy whatever you like. Like, I understand the benefits of something that's more tactile, something more physical than digital. My issue with a lot of those people is they then go out and invalidate the incredible art that other people are using with different formats.
Good point.
I mean, you know, there's a lot of directors who only want to shoot on film still, like Christopher Nolan, but he's not saying that everything shot digitally is hot trash. And I think the same should apply to photographers as well. So yeah, absolutely. If you prefer something that's physically exists, shot on film, rock on, you know, create it yourself, appreciate it when you go to galleries, throw some money at those creators who are paying to develop that film, but just don't dump on anyone who's trying to express themselves with digital mediums.
Like it. All right. Last thing for the day from Jack Bosca? Could be either, right? Jack, again, on SpeakPipe. Let's listen in.
Hey Chris, hey Jordan, it's Jack, fellow Sony shill here. I'm looking at buying the A7 IV when it comes out to replace my A7 III. I've had it for 4 years, been a fantastic camera. I do, you know, basically just side stuff, wedding, videos, more like slow motion type of videos, and then just photography, some portraits here and there, and of course landscapes when I want to. What do you think the A7 V is going to be like? How will it respond to Panasonic's surge recently, and Canon? What do you think that it will be like ultimately? When should we expect it? The price point? How do you think it will compare to the competition? Appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Have a good one.
Yeah, you
Sorry,
Sony
I
shills.
didn't listen. I was actually counting my Sony dollars right now, so I'll have to listen to that again. You know, like bills, they're so light, but they could give you so much material possessions. It's kind of incredible. Where were we, guys?
Yeah, Sony. I don't understand. Like, guys, Jordan shoots Panasonic. Chris. I mean, I guess you
I do like
Sony.
the A7R5. I think it's one of the best mirrorless cameras of all time. I'm sorry. It's a wonderful tool. But yeah, I counted my Sony dollars and I was done counting them right after the first letter that you said. So yeah, it's where's the A7 V going to be? I mean, obviously it's going to get the new AI autofocus. Sorry, I'm supposed to do that.
Thank
AI
you.
autofocus.
Air quotes.
Air quotes. AI autofocus. I don't think they're going to raise the megapixels or not too much. I think the main emphasis is really going to be video. I mean, it'd be nice to see them getting faster reading sensors. I don't know, maybe pushing open gate would be cool. Yeah, I don't know that it's going to be that different from the A7 IV.
I mean, historically, the interesting thing with that series is they update the specialty cameras first and then roll a lot of that technology into, you know, I think they're still calling it the basic, which delights me to no end, the basic model. So we touched on this last time. I think they're going to update the A9 II, the A1, and we'll see some dramatic new features there. And then I would say we're probably a year out, probably next fall, because it's a consumer camera. I think bringing it out in the holidays makes a lot of sense. We'll see a lot of that stuff roll its way into it. I do think they're going to emphasize video quite a bit as well. I think we'll see some of those ZV features now, like the auto framing, stuff like that. As Chris mentioned, we will get the AI processor, hopefully even more advanced than that. Those would be my guesses as to what we're going to see there. But I think we're still a little ways out.
As far as price is concerned, I would expect it to be slightly more expensive than the A7 IV was at launch, probably between $200 and $350 more, simply because of inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think they've really kind of targeted, Canon's doing the same thing. It used to be like that mid-range full frame was 2000 was the sweet spot. That's just been moving up market lately. It seems like 2500 and up is kind of what you're looking at for a full featured camera, so they can have their entry-level full frames down below.
Anything to add, Chris?
No, I mean, I agree. I don't. My initial thought is I don't think it's going to be that big an upgrade over the A7 IV, except just flushing out what we've already seen in the Sony lineup up to this point, and with better video, I think is going to be the main emphasis. Would I love to see like a really fast reading sensor? Sure. I hope we get a new sensor. I mean, part of me is like, oh, are we still going to see the same sensor, but just improvements in processing? I don't know. I would like to see a new sensor. I think the megapixels are going to be similar. It'd have to be faster reading out. I still think it's going to have a shutter. I don't think it's going to be shutterless or anything like that. I think that's really going to be what we see in whatever A1 and A9 kind of cameras are going to come out. So
I think it'll be styled like a Minolta film camera because retro is the thing, people. Nostalgia is great. Everybody loves it. Old is better.
I'm going to make the prediction.
First retro camera. That's funny.
I'm going to make the prediction that it will be slightly higher megapixels. What is it right now? 24?
33.
33?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say 35.
35 megapixel sensor.
Yeah. That's what I'm guessing. All right.
We're all betting our Sony dollars on it right now. You can't see it, but we've got a second sidebar open.
You'll be disappointed if you win the bet and you get our Sony dollars. What you're actually going to have. You'll be very sad.
I can see it in my mind's eye. We're going to get that 35 millimeter or 35 megapixel sensor, and it will be a vintage camera because it'll be like 35 megapixel, 35 millimeter. Do you see it?
Oh.
It'll just no, that's not going to happen. All right, that's it. That's all we got for you guys this week. Thank you for listening. Thank you to OM System for sponsoring this episode yet again. And we will catch you all next week.
Yeah. And Jaren's going to have a veritable light show in his background next week.
I got so many of you can't see them.
It's going to be like a nostalgic rave.
I'm going to be so annoyed.
It's going to be like one of those raves before they had to have paramedics there by law. It's going to be incredible.
Okay. All right. We're waving goodbye now. Bye, everyone.
Bye.